over the last 2 years of utilizing the See Spray Ultimate Sprayer, what has been some of your most noticeable or the biggest successes that you've seen in running this sprayer opposed to prior to the See Spray technology?
Yep. So I should say when I went to the See and Spray unveiling and whenever it was, I think the summer 2023, I remember being down there thinking this really doesn't have a lot of practical use for me in the crops we grow. And when RDO came to us seeing if we wanted to partner in the purchase of a See and Spray in what model year 24, I suppose it would have been, I jumped right on board. So I kind of ate my own words on that one really quick. But, one of the surprises or one of the things that I find is our most success is how predictable your fields are. You look at your weed maps, your weed density maps, and you realize that, wow, there was a tree row I remember removing there 20 years ago, and there's still a lot of weed pressure from that, or an old farmstead or something like that. Another obvious answer would be the chemical savings. That's real money there. Dicamba carryover is kind of another one we're starting to see. If you look back at your weed density maps and you look at what you were applying there, you have a little bit of a yield drag on some of your crops. Now, it could be what came first, the chicken or the egg. Is the yield drag there because of the early weed pressure, or is it maybe because of the dicamba or whatever goes into it? It's interesting. You get to really see how chemical chemistries affect plants in the long-term run where you're trying to raise. And that should be another thing, that kind of led me to buy into the See and Spray technology, that you see, okay, where I'm spraying these chemicals, the yield is a little bit less in those areas. So, if we cut back on that across the field where it's not needed, we're going to see savings there as well through increased yield.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually there's been some studies going on with third-party research being done with See Spray that, we don't put chemistry on the crop. It's not stressed as much. It might grow better. It might yield greater, all of that. So it's neat to hear that you guys are potentially seeing that same outcome with that. So, a lot of good successes, it sounds like, over the first 2 years, whether it be the obvious one that everyone always talks about is the product savings, but it sounds like you've been able to utilize the weed density or weed pressure mapping and draw some correlations. So lot of good successes. Now, obviously, with successes, there's a lot of learning involved, maybe a lot of trial and error or oopsies or things like that. So on that note, what have been some of the biggest or hardest learning curves when it comes to utilizing See Spray?
Yep. So the biggest learning curve is picking the right sprayer tips, which should be an obvious one. I shouldn't even have to say that, but I fell victim to it as well, that you get the wrong tips and you realize we might have a little bit of a problem here. And on the flip side of that, there are tips that we found that worked that in theory probably shouldn't work on See and Spray, but they work just as good as everything else. So that's the biggest learning curve. Another one is just trust the technology. It's tuned in. It's going to work. It's hard to do. We're kind of right at the generational where you trust yourself over technology, but the technology is there. So that was a big curve early on, to just trust the machine, let it do its thing, and it's going to work for you.
Yep. No, absolutely. That's a big thing. And trusting the technology, leaning into it, relying on it. There's still a factor of the human element there that we want to make sure it's working. But, and you talk about tips too, selecting the right tips. That's something that I think even on a traditional sprayer, outside of See Spray, I think it's something we're always learning about, how those tips affect the actual application, the efficacy of the application. So, a lot of good things. We learn as we go. We make changes. We adapt. So with those things that we've learned over the first 2 years, some of the successes that we have seen, what has been one of or a couple of your most surprising outcomes in any of the crops that you're utilizing it on? What was something that you went out there, you utilized the technology, and you're like, man, I did not expect this outcome.
Yeah. So I kind of think of a situation this spring. I had a field, or a block of fields that were a little further from home. And, we had just seeded them and I wanted to go out and spray it. And, to the naked eye, there wasn't a lot of weeds out there. So I thought, I'm going to do this. I'll do See Spray here. And I finished the first field and it was like a 96% savings or something. And at first I thought, wow, that's a lot of savings. The technology paid for itself here. And then about when I got done with that thought, my next thought was, I'm really disappointed in myself that I thought this field needed to be sprayed. So that was one of the outcomes where I started to second guess myself and my ability to judge how weedy our fields were. But to earlier, the predictability of your fields was an outcome I didn't expect early on when we first started seeing this. You kind of think you've got those quack grass spots or pigeon grass spots and you have them, but you don't realize just it's in the exact spot every year almost. And you see that in your weed density maps and your application maps. And that's interesting where that where those maps are going to take us into the future paired with John Deere technology we're seeing slowly trickling out to the marketplace right now. So those types of things are the outcomes I didn't really expect when we went down this journey.